that's going to cause a massive reshuffling of what's seen as investable assets versus not, because 90% of the top 100 tokens right now by market cap don't redistribute any value whatsoever. Do you really think all the funds, all the suits, walking around us today are going to come on chain and buy a token that's a functional meme coin? No, I think we're going to see a massive reshuffling in the top 100. And I think it's going to be oriented around, how do I own a piece of the most valuable infrastructure of the on-chain economy?
All right, I'll go over into reading these two documents real fast from Ripple and the one that goes into detail on the opportunity that exists in Canton. So first particular video breakdown here is, again, coming back to the Future of Finance forum. And now I want to really get your attention on this whole, it's not going to be one chain to rule them all kind of ideology. So kicking it off with that, of course, and listening to what this dude from the Monetary Authority of Singapore says here to just confirm that thesis, right? So listen to what he says.
So-called the network layer, MAS introduced a program called Global Layer 1, where, like, to Bill's point, we don't believe that there's going to be one kind of like network, one winner, if you will. There will be several, right? Those of you in the international policy sphere will know, there are quite a few very large, if you will, initiatives going on to bring multiple stakeholders together, and we think that's a good thing, right? Ultimately, if the financial system wins, where there's one, perhaps more, right, such large networks in place, but there should be some degree of interoperability. There should be some degree of commonality when it comes to issues of uptime, whether it's uptime, right, as what Greg mentioned, or also in terms of regulatory compliance as well. How can the institutions that transact on these different networks gain at least a common degree of understanding and clarity that these transactions are actually meeting regulatory obligations? So these are the issues that we think about. And finally, as I shared earlier, at the settlement layer, right? So we have products, we have networks, and then we have settlement. At the settlement layer, we also want to have multiple streams, right, to advance discussions on what it means to actually have effective settlement. And the central bank, so-called CBDC side, I shared earlier.
So we'll play it there, right? We'll leave it there. He talks about interoperability. He talks about multiple networks. He talks about regulatory compliance. And again, this is just not some random dude. He is a dude from the Monetary Authority of Singapore. So taking into consideration what he's saying, rolling over here and just let's go over some statistics to get the brain juices flowing, considering that we are in a massive pullback, hinting and going off of what we said at the very beginning of today's call, that word opportunity. This is a document from Ripple and Quinlan and Associates. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm just going to read some highlights, institutional highlights, mind you. The foundation of institutionalization and digital asset custody landscape in Hong Kong. The executive summary reads here: while digital assets have long operated in an unregulated or regulatory gray area, recent years have seen financial regulators across the globe introduce clear frameworks, safeguards, and legal standards to bring digital assets under former regulatory oversight. Sorry, the font is so small. Opening the door for a greater institutional adoption. In fact, 77% of financial institutions that they surveyed in Hong Kong have either already adopted digital assets or actively plan to do so. So I highlighted that for you guys, and going back to the first portion of today's video where we've had these timelines where the dude from the Bretton Woods Committee, the ex-Fed chair or the ex-Fed representative from, I don't remember what Fed position he held, but he said 8 to 24 months. And then the lady from BlackRock said 6 to 12 months. Well, let's look at the documents here as well. So down here, it talks about how digital assets ranging from tokenized real-world assets to cryptocurrencies are increasingly being perceived as attractive investment vehicles, driving greater institutional participation in the market. In Hong Kong, financial institutions have already begun incorporating digital assets into their operations, with 77% either already having adopted them or actively planning to do so. This reflects the growing recognition of their strategic importance for both sell-side and buy-side financial participants. Among Hong Kong's financial institutions, tokenized traditional financial assets, fiat-referenced stablecoins, and crypto ETFs stand out as generating particular interest, particularly due to their ease of adoption. Collectively, these trends signal a deliberate shift in institutional behavior in Hong Kong as digital assets transition from niche experiments to mainstream components of investment strategies. And then right here in this graph is what I want to take your attention to. And it says that in the next 1 year or in the next 0 to 12 months, that 32% of the institutions that were surveyed for this survey plan to adopt crypto. And over the next 2 to 3 years, so that fits into the 18 to 24 month category, 20% of institutions plan to adopt. And then right here, it talks about the percentage and the interest of what asset class they plan to allocate to. And crypto actually comes in the third spot. So you can see tokenized financial assets come in at 68%, crypto ETFs and digital money come in at 65% in second place. And cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, ETH, and XRP come in at 58%. So really great to just see those types of timelines. There were some other interesting highlights, but again, I just wanted to give you guys a perspective, from an institutional standpoint via these institutions that were surveyed in this report. So that was good to read. Coming over here to this report from March 2026 titled The Tokenization Megatrend. And it's titled Why Canton is the Best Way to Play the Biggest Structural Shift in Financial Markets Since the Internet. So here it mentions the opportunity. And then I want to play 2 video clips off the back of this intro and the opportunity here. It says, there is a lot of opportunity in the crypto market, but only if you know how to navigate it. The honest truth is that 99% of the crypto market is noise. Meme coins, copycat projects, and tokens with no real-world utility dominate the headlines and drain retail capital. But buried inside that noise is the 1%, a small handful of networks and protocols that are being adopted by the largest financial institutions on the planet. These are the investments that will define this cycle and the next decade of capital markets. And so, in collaboration with that statement from this document, I want you guys to listen to Alex Cutler, who is the primary co-founder and key developer of Aerodrome Finance, who is the leading decentralized exchange on the base layer 2 chain. So listen to what he says here about what he thinks the future is going to look like in crypto.
Pretty firm belief that a lot of this kind of fundamental based investing is returning back to the space. Yep. As you look around, there's more suits here than there are at pretty much just about any conference over the last couple of years. These people want to invest in value. How do you think about this? How do you think about creating value from the Aerodrome perspective? What is the Aerodrome kind of investment thesis here?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in a transformative moment, right? And I think you saw that at the policy conference. You saw it with the guidance that we just got out of the major regulators. We see it at the cusp, perhaps, of getting clarity. We are moving, I think, from a time where the investment game was, will this shitcoin pump? Will this token with absolutely no fundamentals, will I be able to get in early enough and get out fast enough to make some money? To a moment where people are actually going to be looking at, and we're going to have a new class of investors looking at, can I own the best infrastructure of this space? What can I own that's going to accrue value as the space grows by an order of magnitude? What are those mechanisms? What does the token do? What rights does it grant me? And I think as that maturing and new investor class comes in, that's going to cause a massive reshuffling of what's seen as investable assets versus not, because 90% of the top 100 tokens right now by market cap don't redistribute any value whatsoever. Do you really think all the funds, all the suits, walking around us today are going to come on chain and buy a token that's a functional meme coin? No, I think we're going to see a massive reshuffling in the top 100. And I think it's going to be oriented around, how do I own a piece of the most valuable infrastructure of the on-chain economy?
Bro, we've been saying there's going to be a massive reshuffle with the top cryptos right now, bro. And for to hear this guy say it is like, yo.
And he's not only talking about a massive reshuffling, but he specifically said, owning a piece of the infrastructure that actually generates revenue, that actually generates you value, right? Holding a token that actually brings value to the token holder is of key importance. DeFi opportunities, lending, borrowing, even just the tokenomics themselves leading to, burn of the token, right? So that it becomes a deflationary asset, not an inflationary asset. I mean, there's a whole new economic backdrop that goes into investing now that institutions are about to flood in. But he's not the only one that shares this perspective, that collaborates with this document, right? So this is another event that took place, Liquidity 2026, from just 3 weeks ago. Look at the views again. I'm telling you guys, they got this stuff suppressed. 45 views on this video. Shout out to the CYPRX researchers in the Discord for this one, and dropping all these gems, right? But listen to what this guy here says.
Is its proper utility. And look, the market structure bill has the concept of a mature blockchain, capital M, capital B. So if you're the SEC, are you going to give authorization for a company to issue a tokenized financial instrument on a brand new L1? Like, I think the answer is candidly no. And so what we're going to see I think, a convergence around some of the very well established and heavily understood and broadly accepted L1s, and we're going to see I think we'll see a sort of real selection process go on. So I would imagine that we see a lot of L1s become redundant over the next kind of 5 years.
He pretty much kindly said they're going to be going away. Like,
there's going to be a massive restructuring. It has to happen, and unfortunately, a lot of people's feelings are going to get hurt when it happens. But remember that if you're investing based off of emotional feelings because of something that you've seen on the internet, and instead of doing real deep research and actually paying attention to what the institutions are adopting, you really truly risk messing up this generational opportunity because you're watching the wrong people on the internet, spew all this hype and hopium to you all these years. But in reality, the institutions on the back end behind the scenes weren't really ever adopting those layer ones, and they were over here trickling out with other layer ones. You have to have that discernment from hype and reality.
Facts, bro. Facts. Yeah.
And
I would even say too, like, you shouldn't be all in on one. Like, you shouldn't have all your eggs in one basket in this game right now at all.
That is super big risk.
That's massive risk, bro. Because if that that basket ends up being one of these nobodies, I guess we could say, you're going to be completely out. I feel
there's three things that are going to get people completely wrecked this cycle. It's lack of digital literacy. So, like, not understanding DeFi, not understanding tokenization, not understanding artificial intelligence, like just anything digital transformation. Get your digital literacy up. Second thing is proper risk management, right? Make sure that you are not overexposing yourself with leverage. Make sure that if you are testing out DeFi strategies, you are doing it with what you're willing to lose, and you're not overexposing yourself in your portfolio. And then the third thing that's going to get people wrecked is tribalism, is being tribal towards this idea that your chain, because you watched a YouTube video on the internet with some theorist talking about how one asset's going to be worth $10,000 in the future or something, and sticking to that mentality and that mentality only, and not actually seeing what the institutions are saying, the ones with credentials, the ones like the Visas of the world, the freaking MasterCards of the world. And when they make an announcement that they're working with a public layer one, not like doing research on that public layer one instead of the one that you like because it's your personal opinion, that stuff's going to get people wrecked.
Yeah.
This cycle.
Super wrecked. And I'll say this too, if there's any more volatility, which I'm sure there's going to be, right? Not understanding why the markets are down too. Like, if something drastic happens and these markets go even lower, so many people are not going to have a clue as to why. And they're going to think, oh my God, it's really over,
Yeah, it's like fundamentals, like having a fundamental understanding of the backdrop and the liquidity cycle that we're currently in, and central bank positioning, monetary policy, freaking, inflation, labor market data, geopolitical risk, all those things. 110%, bro. 110%. Could not agree with you more. All right, last two fundamentals real quick. I just want to share with you guys this specific post just goes on to talk about, I don't want to show you guys Canton, so I wasn't going to read the whole entire thing because this article here, or this post, this report is pretty biased towards Canton. I'm not going to lie. But one thing that he talks about in this post here is it says developers get paid on Canton, not just validators. This is one of the most underappreciated features of Canton. On Ethereum and Solana, when a user pays a transaction fee, 100% of that fee goes to the validators who processes it. The developers who actually built the application, the team that create the product, attract the user, and generated all the activity received nothing. This broken incentive structure has forced app developers across crypto to create their own tokens just to monetize their work. It is the reason the market is flooded with thousands of tokens that exist not because they need to, but because developers had no other way to capture value from the products that they built. Canton fixes this entirely. If you build an application on Canton that brings activity to the network, the protocol pays you directly. Think of it like a revenue share model. That's a key vocabulary word right there. A revenue share model. The network recognizes that without great apps, there are no users, and without users, there are no fees. So it pays the people who actually drive growth. This creates a powerful flywheel where better apps attract more institutions generate more fees, and more fees flow back to the developers who made it possible. So I'll play this video clip, this last piece right here, from this lady. Let me just share her credentials. She is the head of portfolio growth at CoinFund. CoinFund is one of the world's most experienced crypto native investment firms. Her name's Jenna Pilgrim, and she literally says word for word exactly the problem that Canton solves. Listen to what she says here.
So for the first question, maybe let's talk about like what is a narrative and what's driving the narratives. Is it the KOLs? Is it the VCs? Is it just the price? Or is it something else? Go for it, Jenna.
So I think differently from other cycles, we're really seeing revenue and fees drive narrative. And I think that's a lot healthier. It means that those of us who come from traditional finance understand that things can actually be measured. We have some models that we can run on protocols now. And we never used to be able to explain why protocols were able to grow or why developers wanted to build on them. Many people hold the belief that the best technology will win. And I think we've actually seen that to be not true. The best technology won't win. The best distribution will win. And I think that distribution is really incentivized by what revenue and what protocol fees you can pass on to the user. This whole concept of collective ownership, but also collective earning, is a new concept. It seems kind of like silly and novel, but yeah, that's a real narrative driving forward, I think.
So, don't take that from me. This is an institutional investment firm, CoinFund, and she says, we got to wake up out of this mindset that the best tech will win, because that's not true. These institutions are profiteering. These institutions are greedy, and they're definitely not going to come into this space and adopt something if it doesn't generate them revenue and is good for their business model, right? And that's like kind of like a clear. You would think that people would be like, oh, you know what? Actually, that does make sense. It makes perfectly good sense. If you went into an institution and preached this business idea, or, hey, come adopt our layer one, and you had all this tech, like it's super fast, it's compliant, it does this, it settles in 2 seconds, no gas fees, whatever. And then one of the dudes raises their hand and he's like, yeah, but how do we actually profit from it? Like, how do we make money? And then you didn't have anything to say back to the institution when they asked that. They'd probably laugh you out of their office, right? So, we have to really consider that as retail investors when we're doing all these research on these coins and freaking, I don't even know. They come out with some new fast blockchain and they're like, oh my God, crypto institutions are going to adopt this blockchain. It's the fastest one. And you get headstrong on it and you're like, oh my God, it is. It's faster than this, or it's faster than that layer one. And you get attached to it. You have to ask yourself the question, if I invest into it, outside of price appreciation, how is it going to make me money? How is it going to generate me revenue? Does it have DeFi capabilities? Does it have incentive mechanisms? Did the tokenomics actually lead to a burn of the token, creating a deflationary spiral? All these things, like, those are things heading into this new cycle of institutional adoption that we as retail investors really have to pay attention to. And I just can't stress enough, again, like I mentioned, not being biased, not being tribalistic, and just really having digital literacy and understanding these types of perspectives. So shout out to the CYPRX researchers for all these shares. Aquaman, it was a blessing. Everybody in the chat today was very respectful and super motivating. So great to see you guys come out on these Fridays calls with us. But yeah, that's all that I have for you today.
The point that she had made, the super validators on Canton Network are the ones that have the access to build on Canton, to receive those fees. So I feel like it's almost safe to say, right, that these super validators are going to be building on Canton Network to take advantage of that, right?
And they have some of the biggest super validators in the freaking world, bro. And it's crazy how many other announcements have recently come out. Like this happened just yesterday. PCP partners with Digital Asset and the Canton Foundation. And look at this. It says Programmable Credit Protocol, PCP, a credit orchestration infrastructure for tokenized assets developed by semi-liquid tech labs, has partnered with Digital Asset and the Canton Foundation to provide the Canton ecosystem with institutional credit infrastructure. The collaboration will see PCP enable custody native lending against assets on the network, said to allow banks, hedge funds, market makers, and other market participants to borrow and lend against tokenized securities, fund deposits, Canton coin, Bitcoin, and many others. So, huge announcements left and right. Canton is definitely one of those assets that you don't want to, ignore. I'll play this last clip and then that'll be my spiel here for today. And then I'll let Aqua wrap it up if he has anything else. But I said here in this post that data is the new oil. Canton Network, Bloomberg data once locked behind institutions is now being integrated directly on chain through Canton. That means real world financial data can trigger smart contracts instantly. No delays, just seamless execution. You got Jane King, the CEO of Keiko Data, who is a leading provider of cryptocurrency and digital asset market data, speaking at the New York Stock Exchange. And listen here to what she says in this response to the interviewee.
Now, you're working with the Canton Network. And they're, of course, on the cutting edge as well as of tokenization. Where do you see tokenization going?
Tokenization matters if you can then do something with the token. And one of the reasons we are so involved and so passionate about building on the Canton Network.
I'll pause it right there. Did you hear what she said? Tokenization becomes important when you can do something with the token.
Right.
Look at a freaking vision. I love him in chat. Freaking bingo, right? That's you nailed it. Couldn't have said it better.
Is that it is a network that is designed for capital markets and that has a very strong privacy by design elements to the way they thought about the network. Privacy is absolutely critical to enabling capital markets applications. You will not have financial institutions, publicly displaying their financial positions or the types of contracts they are working on with their counterparts. So Canton is a network that is very well suited for capital markets application, and that also applies for data. Capital markets application by design, it's already the case in traditional finance, consume market data feeds in order to monitor contracts, monitor collateral value, to create mark-to-market, to price NAVs. I mean, everything consumes data. Financial, data is a key component of market infrastructure. So we are bringing that to the Canton Network.
Now, another announcement that you've had recently is with Bloomberg, which is well known as a data provider on Wall Street, has been for decades. Explain that relationship.
Absolutely. And this also ties back into our work with Canton. What we have announced with Bloomberg is that Bloomberg is working with Keiko in order to bring their licensed data to their users on the blockchain. What does that mean in practice? It means that an existing client of Bloomberg can decide that they are going to build some financial applications natively on the Canton Network, and that those applications that would consume Bloomberg data outside of the chain could now consume the data directly on chain in order to trigger the disintermediated execution of financial contract in a very seamless manner. So this is very important. Data is, one of the key elements to fuel financial applications, and now it is available natively on Canton.
Okay, data is the new oil, they say. So,
and protecting that data as well.
I'll end it there. Data is the new oil. As always, blessings to you guys. Remember that in the CYPRX private community, whether it's the Wealth 28 Club, whether it's you're inside the Discord, all throughout the week, we deliver non-mainstream research that you will not see on YouTube and Twitter, right? How many of these video breakdowns today that you guys saw that you see trending on Twitter or YouTube? Probably none of them, right? Real macro and institutional market breakdowns we deliver all throughout the week. We have institutional grade technical insights with our deltas and our dark zones that our institutional scalper delivers to our private community. We have 4 to 6 private Zoom calls all throughout the week. I'm always hosting Zoom calls for the community and the members. Aqua's delivering his DeFi calls throughout the week. There's hundreds upon hundreds of educational documents. We have the largest collection of esoteric, spiritual, and awakening resources inside the private CYPRX Discord. We'd love to have you on the team. Many blessings to you guys. As always, be cognizant, be aware out there, and we'll see you guys next Friday. Everybody take it easy.
Much love. Peace, everybody.